Basic arts? Quinn read. Does this mean there are stronger vampire martial arts out there? This time, the tutorial was unlocked when Quinn had learned the vampire martial arts, so perhaps there was a tutorial skill related to it. Yes, Fex replied. These are only the basics. I can perform at a level above what I showed you, obviously, but I honestly wouldn't be good enough to teach them to you. If you want to learn some more, you're better off getting a real teacher to show you. While the two of them were busy practicing inside the private server, they were unaware of what was happening elsewhere in the game. Zombie P winner. A few people in the crowd were currently watching a particular student play the VR game. Each of them had lost the matches, but found the fights a little strange, so they opted to watch the next few games. New match has been found. A new game had started, and once again, the student they had their eye on was going up against a level 3 telekinesis user. The telekinesis user had several black balls attached around his chest, while his opponent had no weapons at all. Standing on the opposite side was Peter. He didn't look like his usual self, as he was slightly disguised by the avatar, although he selected a pretty basic default design that had a randomly generated face with a few scraps of clothing. The fight had begun. Peter rushed forward. At the same time, the telekinesis user threw out the metallic balls using his ability to speed them up. Peter, however, was fast and was able to dodge most of the incoming attacks, and the few that he couldn't, he knocked away with his hand. Eventually, one of the metallic balls came at great speed and managed to hit Peter in the center of his shin, smashing and breaking it in half, causing him to fall to the ground. The telekinesis user calmly walked over to Peter, thinking it was all over. He had taken out one of his opponent's legs, and no movement would mean the end. However, the others watching from the stand knew it wasn't the end for Peter. They had all thought the same thing while fighting against Peter. Suddenly, after a few moments, Peter was able to stand up again, as if the attack had never hit his leg in the first place. He immediately ran towards his opponent. Eventually, when he was close enough, Peter pounced on top of his opponent and widely swung his fists towards his head. There was no class and no style with Peter's attacks. It was like one of a wild animal. Winner, Zombie P. Each of the opponents Peter had gone against had witnessed his impressive regenerative abilities. Still, some people were suspicious, since Peter also seemed to have impressive strength and speed on top of his healing powers. As the game had ended just outside the VR pod, Logan was finally waking up from his nap. As he slowly opened his eyes and looked around the room, he noticed that Peter wasn't there. "Peter!" Logan said as he rushed over to the computer and immediately logged in. It was as he thought. Peter had not logged into the private server to play, but instead had logged into the military servers. Quickly, Logan brought up a log of Peter's past games, hoping he hadn't done anything to stand out. He had already received a few emails from admins, asking to look into the user ID of Zombie P, making sure it wasn't a hacked player, since there had been a few complaints made online. "I guess your fame online will be a short one, Peter. The world cannot learn of you just yet." With that, Logan forcefully disconnected Peter from the online world. However, it was a little too late, as some of Peter's amazing regenerative power videos had already been spread online. Meanwhile, in another military base, a certain group of boys had also managed to watch the videos that had been posted. "Did you see?" Sam asked. "Yeah. Looks like there will be a lot of interesting people at the intermilitary base event," Nate replied with a big smile. Inside the training hall in one of the military bases, Nate and Sam were training. They often went to other planets to support the base military in their endeavors. However, as of the moment, the second-year students were to remain at their bases for the time being, under the upcoming interbase military event. It was an event that required all of the 8 military bases to enter. It was a competition among the bases. The military bases would compete to see who had raised the best and strongest students. The event was important for the military bases and their leaders, since they would often get more funding and privileges based on the performance shown during their participation. The two of them were in the room. Sam was reading a level 6 ability book that was placed on the floor. Sam had his eyes closed for a while now, meditating. All of a sudden, a burning sensation arose in his chest, promptly stopping him from what he was doing. The burning ache that Sam felt in his heart meant that he had reached his limit. Thus, pushing his body any further could be dangerous. Nate said with a cheery tone in his voice, trying to ease Sam's worries. "All we need to do is get you some good beast gear that suits your ability. Also, we can always work on your skills." Meanwhile, inside the school's IT room, Silver was currently standing above one of the school's staff members. The reflection from the screen displayed that his eyes had a slight red tint to them, meaning that he was under Silver's control. Right now, she was searching for the school files regarding a student named Fex. "Oh, you stupid little boy," Silver said out loud. The file was found, and it seemed like Fex had used his real name. Although this was good news for her, it wasn't long until the interbase military event, and she would be able to make her move to bring Fex home. "Hopefully you haven't caused too much trouble yet." It appeared like everyone was busy, dead set on doing their own thing. Because of this, Vorden found the situation a little boring. If he was left on his own accord, there were only two people who he could talk to, although they seemed to be a bad influence on him. "Hey, do you think we can trust her?" Rayton shouted as he asked. "We knew something was up, and it looks like we were right, working for Pure. Who knows what she's already told them?" "They could be after Quinn," Syl said while continuing to rock back and forth. "Guys, will you all just calm down?" Vorden hollered, annoyed by his companion's complaints. "What about the next portal outing?" Rayton queried. "What if she plans to make her next move then? We need to find her real goal." "Fine," Vorden replied, giving in to the idea. He knew firsthand that if he didn't do something, Rayton would continue down this path, and eventually he would get Syl worried. "Then I will go talk to Layla." Thus, Vorden went to the dorms to visit Layla. Upon knocking on the door, a female student answered it. The most prominent feature of the lady was her short black hair, with a fringe that cascaded her face, nearly covering the entirety of her right eye. Her name was Sia, and she was the third person who occupied Aaron and Layla's room. "Is Layla there?" Vorden asked. "Are you her boyfriend?" Sia said as she scanned Vorden's body from head to toe. "I'm guessing you two had an argument or something, judging how she's been since yesterday. Or maybe it was the fact that she found out her best friends were terrorists, but she's not here." This was the explanation the school had given, that 8 students had been found with connections to the group known as Pure and were taken to the dungeon as a form of punishment. "Look, if you want to find Layla, she's usually by the back of the building, sitting on the bench just underneath the large tree. She and Aaron often went there together," Sia said. With that piece of information, Vorden left without saying another word. As he turned the corner, he indeed saw someone sitting alone on a bench right underneath a tree. "Vorden, what do you want?" Layla asked in a rude tone. She had just lost her best friend, and the last person she wanted to see was standing right before her eyes. "I think we need to talk about whether or not I can trust you," Vorden asked. Layla interrupted Vorden. "I was in Pure this whole time before everything started. The only difference now is that you guys know about it. That hasn't changed who I am, and let me ask you, aren't you going around accusing me all the time? But what about you? Why do you care so much about Quinn?" At this point, Layla had stood up from the bench and was starting to inch closer to Vorden. "If she takes one more step closer to us, Vorden, and you don't do anything about it, I swear," Rayton said, his tone a tad threatening. "Shut up!" Vorden shouted as he grabbed his head. "Layla, I need to trust you. If I can't trust you, then I'm afraid of what will happen to you." "Then tell me, Vorden, what can I do to prove I'm on your side?" she asked. Fortunately, Vorden had prepared an answer to this question. "Let Quinn turn you into a vampire. That way, I know that you're on his side." Layla's anger bubbled at such a question. Why couldn't he do it as well? He could get turned too. And yet, despite wanting to ask such a question about why he couldn't do the same, she already knew the answer. It was the loss of Vorden's ability. His skills were versatile, which was a great help to them on several occasions. While for her, it didn't mean much. Her powers were quite weak, only being a level 2. "I want to go to Vorden, but it's too risky right now," she replied. "If I go off the radar, stop reporting to Pure and choose to be by Quinn's side, they could run an investigation. They would then look into me, send higher-ups, and then Quinn would be in even more trouble," Layla explained. "When the time is right, I promise I will be by Quinn's side." The school no longer searched for the missing students. After doing a sweep of the school, it looked like none of the students had seen Peter or Aaron. In the end, they deemed that the video that had been sent must have been true, and they were too late. With the help of Leo, they were able to gain access to the portal room once again. Leo was able to sneak Peter into the room, and with him, several of Logan's mechanical little spiders. Logan pressed a key on his keyboard. At the same time, in a different location, in the school's security office, a signal was detected. Haley soon came along with Faye to check who had made the signal. "That's one of the missing students!" Faye shouted as soon as she saw Peter. She had recognized him since she had dealt with their case files. "Quick, Haley takes him to the medical facility. We need to give him a full health checkup. This is the first bit of good news we have had in quite a while." Right inside Logan's room, Quinn and the entire group were standing with a smile, which soon turned into one of horror as they heard those words. "Hey, when have I ever messed up?" Logan complained. "It's pretty obvious that as soon as they find a student who has been missing for a while and comes back in tattered clothes from a planet that had suffered a Dalkey attack, the first thing they would do is take him to the medical facility." It was something the others hadn't thought about. They had all been too busy and focused on their problems. They didn't think this through. As they took Peter to the medical facility, Haley went ahead and ran a general check on Peter's condition. She hooked Peter up to a large, tube-like machine. The machine would show his internals and display his insides, as well as see if there was something wrong with any of his organs, including his heart. This was where Logan's ability had come to its advantage. Logan was able to fake a sickness and enter the medical facility beforehand. During this time, he had touched every machine available there. While doing so, he had taken control of the machines. "It looks like you're in perfect condition," Haley said as Peter lifted him outside of the machine. "Now I just need to ask you a few questions." Logan had come up with a backstory that was plausible according to the situation. It detailed how the Dalkey had attacked their group and he had run away, luckily escaping the fiasco. He traveled through the desert for many days, eventually reaching a shelter. The problem was, it was the wrong shelter. The shelter only had teleporters that linked to other planets, and none back to Earth or the military base, but he found out the shelter he had come from wasn't too far. He stayed until he regained his strength and purchased a map, leading him to the original shelter, and eventually returned to the military base. Once the questioning was over, Haley left Peter to be with a soldier, guarding him as he rested, while she went off to report to Nathan. "So, how is the boy?" Nathan asked. "Thankfully, he seems to be in perfect condition health-wise, but—" Haley hesitated. "But what?" Nathan replied. "It seems like his mind isn't all there. Sometimes his response was quite rigid, and there seemed to be a lack of emotion. Pio didn't have any of these signs before, although this could be due to the trauma of being attacked by the Dalkey." "That's great news," Nathan said. "As long as the student is fine, it'll be okay. We can inform his parents about the good news for now. Have him rejoin classes tomorrow." As Haley left the room, Nathan went to pick up the files on his desk as he read through them one by one. "An orange portal outing? What are they thinking?" Nathan said. It was late that night, and the others had left the room to go to sleep. Just before they left the room, Fex had spotted something on Logan's workbench. It was a square-shaped portable teleporter. While the others were busy saying their goodbyes while friendly chatting with each other, Fex decided to move closer to have a look. It looked like he had the square teleport device hooked up via some cables leading upward to the computer screen. "He can't be trying to crack the thing, can he? This is bad," Fex thought. As everyone headed back to their rooms, Fex managed to pull Quinn to the side just before they were about to part ways. "Just a little warning to you, Quinn. The device that Logan has been tinkering around with on his workbench, it's a portal leading back home. You need to do everything you can to stop him." Fex left after warning Quinn before he could even ask any questions. "What was that all about?" Quinn murmured. He then decided to carefully think about what Fex had said. By home, there could only be one place Fex was talking about. It was where the vampires came from. Still unsure whether or not that was somewhere on Earth or another planet, or at least a place hidden from the human eye. He understood that he needed to stop Logan before he figured it out. The only thing Quinn didn't understand was why Fex seemed so concerned. Quinn then thought of his first meeting with Fex. He mentioned something along the lines that he wasn't meant to be here. "If what you are thinking is along those lines, then I'm afraid the situation is worse," the system said. "Based on the boy's young age and at the same time, his great skill, it would be wise to assume he holds a high position in one of the vampire families. If he is not here on orders, then they will send others on his trail to retrieve him. We need to be careful." The next day, the first-year students were called into the assembly hall for a meeting once again. Nathan walked onto the stage. "Okay, I'm not one for speeches, so let's get to the point," Nathan said. "This year the military has decided to expand their operation and get more aggressive in planetary explorations," Nathan explained. "So, what does that mean for you guys? Well, instead of the normal green portal, you guys get to jump ahead and explore an orange portal instead." Hearing the news, the students suddenly broke into gossip. "An orange portal this soon? I thought they only did that with the second years. Why would they do this to us, especially after the Dalkey attack?" "Silence!" Nathan shouted. "Don't worry, there will be 2 sergeants sent out with you on this journey. Leo, head of the beast weapon class, and Faye." Faye then took over and walked to the podium. "You will remain in your teams of 5 while traveling in the larger group of 50. Each team will be given a certain device that would be used to survey the land and map out the terrain. The data recorded will be used to automatically create a world map and other maps for future use on the planet. More details will be explained once the devices have been given to you." The hall of students quickly shifted around, with everyone getting into the same groups they were in before. Quinn, Vorden, and Layla remained in one group. Peter, now known as Pio, had decided to come over to join Quinn's group. "So what do we do about the 5th person?" Vorden inquired. As Quinn looked around the room, he noticed once again that Fex was all on his own. Seeing this, Quinn shouted, "Fex, come join us over here." Fex came rushing over towards the others. "I guess you guys realized how lame your group is," Fex said, his tone indicating that he was proud of himself. "So you immediately needed me to boost it up a level. Well, if you insist." Upon hearing that, an awkward smile made its way to Quinn's face. He merely wanted to be close to Fex, hoping he would eventually learn more about the vampire world. While everyone was huddled up in their groups, there seemed to be 3 stray students that had walked up to the front of the assembly hall, going straight to stand by Faye's side. As she looked into the crowd of people, she started to look at each of the groups. Every single one of them was already filled with 5 people. "You there, and you." She surveyed the room one more time, and her eye had managed to capture Vorden. "And you. You can head to those at the back," she said. Vorden was the one with the most knowledge in the group, and he was saying how it varied from place to place. The orange portal was amidst 2 stages. Once the whole planet had been explored, they would use the information that they had gathered to update its status to green or red. Just then, a voice echoed loudly within the hall. "Hello?" Sia said as she entered the circle. "You," Vorden replied, shocked that he saw Sia. "What are you doing here?" "Sergeant Faye has asked me to join your team," Sia explained. Right now, everyone in their team knew of each other's abilities. However, Sia knew nothing. If she was to join the team, it would only slow them down. Sia then looked at each of the members. "So I'm already acquainted with the hottie and puppy eyes over there," she said, referring to both Vorden and Layla. "But what about the rest of you?" Then she pointed at each one of them as she continued to provide them with nicknames. "Average Joe over there," pointing to Quinn. "Dead Eyes," pointing to Peter. "And—" When she got to Fex, she paused slightly. "Go on, then," Fex said. "Compliment me on my good looks." "Arrogant young master type," she said. Sia looked defeated and appeared like she didn't want to be in the group at all. Not realizing that they felt the same way, "Well, we better get to introducing everyone then. If we have to work as a team, I guess the first thing we need to know is about everyone's abilities, right?" Sia asked. When the question asking about their abilities arose, everyone in the circle was a bit hesitant to answer. "I don't have an ability," Quinn quickly answered. All the while, after seeing this, she quickly ignored him and moved on to the next person. Quinn was fine with this. "I already know Layla's, and most people learned about that pretty boy after the event with the second years in the assembly hall. That means I just need to know yours," Sia said as she looked at Peter. Peter then gave Sia a rather uncordial glance, since he wasn't in a great mood. What annoyed him wasn't Sia's attitude towards him, but her disregard for Quinn, his master. "I can show you firsthand if you want," Peter said, raising his fist. "Peter!" Quinn snapped. So Peter immediately put his fist down and went back to his master's side. "What the hell was that all about?" Sia asked in bewilderment. "Don't you think you should tell us your ability first before asking for ours?" Vorden questioned. "Well, my ability will be a little hard to explain, so why don't I just show you?" Sia looked at all the people in the group. At first, she would have tried using her ability against Peter. However, judging by how he acted, she didn't want to do that now. Out of all the people in the group, there seemed to be one target that stood out as the weakest. As Sia lifted her hand, smoke gradually appeared on top of her palms. The smoke was colored in the shade of blue that the skies had. It started to form a certain shape. Its body was similarly hued to the smoke. After a brief window, a pointed blade emerged on one end of the fully formed thin rod. The final product was a short spear, spanning half of Sia's height, made of animate smoke. Without warning, she looked towards her target and threw the spear. It flew through the air and managed to hit Quinn, dead in the chest. "Quinn!" Layla shouted. "Are you okay?" When the spear had made contact with Quinn, he felt no pain. Although he could feel the object piercing him, it didn't seem to have inflicted any physical damage. No bruises, scratches, or holes where blood could trickle. Still, there was definitely an effect. Part of his energy felt like it was being absorbed by the weapon. It was a similar feeling to when he was out in the sun, only a lot weaker. Finally, the notification sound was heard. "You have been affected by Spirit Spear. All stats have been reduced by 10%. "What did you do to me?" Quinn said, his anger evident in his voice that became a bit deeper. The others had never seen Quinn like this before, so they were stunned. Meanwhile, filled with rage, Quinn started to walk toward Sia. Right now, Quinn was unsure what Sia's skill was. All he knew was it had reduced his stats by 10%. If this was a permanent effect, then he would have lost a lot of hard work. "Is this guy really a level 1? Sia thought, as she looked into the anger that was swimming in Quinn's eyes. She wasn't sure if she imagined it or not, but she thought she could see the color of his eyes slowly starting to turn red. "Hey, Quinn, relax," Fex said as he jumped in between the two of them before Quinn could even act. He then leaned forward and whispered to Quinn, making sure his body and head were blocking Sia from seeing him. "Quinn, your eyes, they're red. You need to control your anger and calm down," Fex advised. However, as Quinn thought about how hard he had worked to gather those stat points, and them going away just like that, his anger started to boil again. "Spirit Spear has worn off. Stats have returned to normal." The spear that impaled his chest slowly dissipated into thin air, and the energy seemed to return to his body. At the same time, his mind was suddenly cleared along with his anger. "Hey, did you really think I would hurt you in front of all these teachers and students? It looks like I've joined a team of crazy people," Sia complained. "A support ability?" Vorden said. Sia simply nodded as a response to Vorden's query. "It allows the user to form spirit weapons in their mind. When this spirit hits its target, it can either act as a buff or debuff. When my ability hits, it is able to debuff the target for 5 seconds, and then the effect wears off. Because I'm only a level 3, though, the amount of time the spear lasts is only 3 seconds, and the distance I can throw the spear is quite short." The others didn't want to admit it, but having Sia on the team would be a great addition. Support-type abilities were greatly sought after. "Anyway, it looks like this group won't amount to much," Sia uttered. "So why don't we just meet up on the day of the portal outing? There's no point training together within the 2 days left, prior to the expedition." "I agree. Why don't we all do our own thing before the portal outing? It's been a tiring week, and I think some of us can do with some rest," Quinn said. Before the others could even say anything, Sia was already walking off. The assembly had ended, and students were told that, until the portal outing, they would have the next 2 days off. While everyone was busy doing their own business, Quinn had arrived at the VR gaming room. With the nanostick that had been given to him, he no longer needed to bug Logan. Accordingly, he headed to his room in order to use the private servers. "Now, let's see what you got. Tutorial video for skill Phantom Hit has begun." The VR room was the best place to practice, and now that he had access to Logan's private server, it meant Quinn could also practice his shadow abilities freely. The first thing Quinn was going to do was have a look at the new tutorial video he had unlocked after learning the vampire martial arts. "Phantom Punch tutorial." "Hello there," the blonde man in a cheery voice said in the video. "In my opinion, this is one of the most useful skills to have. But just a little warning, this skill seems to work better with beings with a high level of intelligence, namely humanoid creatures. When testing this against a beast, it has little to no effect. To perform this skill based on the system stats, you will need at least 15 points of agility and 10 points of charm. These are the minimum requirements. Now, as you increase your points into charm and agility, this skill will work even better. While in a fight, you will aim your punch in a certain direction to start. Before the first movement is made, your charm skill will take slight control of the user's mind. To them, an image will appear and make it look like the punch has continued heading in the initial direction. But in fact, this will be a phantom punch. While the user is dodging or trying to block it, the real blow will come from somewhere else. This skill works even better if you have high enough agility. You will be able to perform several phantom punches at once, confusing your opponent. But be careful. Just like with Daze, it has a chance of not working well. This is why I recommend you to increase your charm points when possible. He explained it by saying it should feel similar to when Quinn would use the Daze skill. He should gather that feeling again and try to focus it through his eyes. Then, using his strong will and the image in his head, he would be able to project a fist outward. This in turn would allow the opponent to see the same thing. After hearing the explanation, Quinn didn't think it would be too hard, but just practicing it, not using it against an opponent, he found out it was extremely difficult. If he projected thoughts to target the head and tried punching below, as soon as he thought too much about hitting the head, his fist would automatically hit upward. Still, Quinn wasn't the type to give up. As he repeated the move several times, he could slowly separate his thoughts and actions into two separate things. He didn't know whether it was because he was in the game or trying to split his thought into two, but he would often get headaches as he pictured himself using the charm ability while forcing the energy outward from his eyes. Your dedication has paid off. You have pushed your charm skill to the limit several times. Charm stat +1. Charm 13. It was the first time a stat point had increased without him leveling up or consuming blood. The system was clear that it was a fact that Quinn had continuously pushed himself while trying to learn the skill. Switching servers. Blood Evolver is online. Matchmaking in progress. Opponent found. There were myriads of abilities that could help you work better in this field, but nothing could compare to the greatness of the human mind when it came to creative thinking and engineering which led to the creation of these fields. Nate had gotten one of these said people to set up a system in which he would get notified when the Blood Evolver was online. Recently, he had also added the new user Zombie P to that list as well. While Nate was relaxing with his best friend Sam, as usual, he received a notification. Nate immediately headed off towards the capsule. Quinn had been matched up with another level 4 user, but unlike the ones he fought against previously, this user was also wearing beast gear around his chest. As he turned his head around, Quinn made sure to look him in the eyes, just as the video tutorial had said. He activated his charm the same way when he used the Daze skill. Now all he needed to do was project the thought strongly, using his mind of aiming to punch the head, while the real punch would come from below. Everything was going perfect so far, and he could imagine hitting the person in the head. Then his fist made contact, but instead of receiving feedback from hitting the body, the punch had been blocked with the other user's hand, which was guarding his face. No, I thought I did it perfectly. Why did my attack go for the head? Quinn thought. Quinn previously thought he had perfected the Phantom Punch, but using it with no opponent and using it against a real opponent were two different things. With the pressure to perform perfectly and with the enemy standing in front of him, his concentration lagged at some point, so his attack failed. Eventually, the match had ended, and Quinn unsurprisingly lost. Nate was speechless. He thought he was the only person who had beaten the Blood Evolver before, and the one he knew now was a lot stronger than before. Once again, Quinn went into the next match. Nate stayed and watched carefully, but it seemed to be nearly an exact copy of the last game. After watching 4 matches, the Blood Evolver had lost 4 times in a row. There were a few others who had become fans as well, and they were nearly just as disappointed as him with the results they were seeing right now. No one would usually lose a match without giving it everything they got, and in the last 4 games, Quinn didn't use a single skill other than the Flash Step and the failed Phantom Punch. After losing 5 matches in a row, the only person that kept on watching Blood Evolver's matches was Nate. He didn't know why, but he felt that there had to be a reason for all the strange actions that Blood Evolver did in the past matches. The reason for his thinking was the fact that Quinn had lost every game doing the same thing. Only an idiot would do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. As the next match started, Quinn now looked more confident than he did before. His opponent was a female. The ability for now was unknown, as the inspection skill didn't work in-game. Quinn rushed forward as usual, but this time, no attacks were aimed at him. When this happened, it usually meant the person he was going up against had a transformation or hardening ability, the perfect opponent for the Phantom Strike. Quinn lifted his fist and aimed for the woman's head. As she saw the punch, a large spike appeared on her face. If Quinn was to carry on moving forward, then the spike would go right through his hand. She could see the punch rushing forward and about to go through the spike. A smile appeared on her face, but suddenly she felt pain in her stomach as she keeled over. Phantom Punch skill successfully learned. The fist hadn't hit her head, but struck her stomach instead. Quinn continued using the Phantom Punch in this fashion, successfully landing hit after hit, while on the outside, Nate, who was watching the entire thing, was deeply confused. All he could see was Quinn's opponent forming spikes and blocking the attacks in the wrong places. It was clear where the punches were coming from, so why was she constantly blocking in the wrong place? The match had finally ended, and Quinn had been declared the winner, but Nate was even more confused now. However, after watching the Blood Evolver's next 3 games, and each one of them coming out in a victory in the same fashion, goosebumps started to appear all over his body. Once the system had confirmed Quinn that he had learned Phantom Punch, everything got a lot easier from then onwards. Instead of concentrating on the feeling like he did before, now all he had to do was think about the skill, and his mind would automatically do the work for him. Finally, the day had arrived. It was the weekend, and all the first-year students were told to gather inside the portal room once again. It was time to go through the orange portal. All the groups present, please raise their orange scanning devices, Dell said, as he raised the scanner for everyone to see. You will only need to point it at an object. You can see that on the screen. You can select the area or item that you want to scan. It will try its best to break down the information it has received and display it on the screen for you, although this is not the goal of the expedition. What you students need to do is look for things on the planet which have never been scanned before, and this includes beasts. In your teams, each newly scanned object will earn you points. If the item has been scanned before, you will receive no points. There is quite a range on these scanners. Before engaging in combat, it will scan every beast that is within your vision. The most useful thing about these scanners is that, even if they have never seen a beast before, it will be able to tell you what level the beast is at. After the explanation with the scanners was over, Dell went on to tell them how the expedition would work between the classes. Each class, together with their homeroom teacher, would be sent off to a certain area. When they reached their assigned space, the class would stay there for a while, allowing every one of the students to scan the area thoroughly. If they were to run into a beast with a tier higher than intermediate, they were advised to fall back and tell the teacher immediately. The homeroom teacher would then inform the generals, who would come to their aid as soon as possible. As soon as Dell's lecture was finished, the groups began making their final preparations. While Quinn was looking around, he noticed that Logan was already tinkering around with the scanner, no doubt making adjustments to the scanner's system. All of a sudden, he felt a soft touch on his shoulder, interrupting his observations. "Hey, do you need one of these if we're going outside?" Fex said as he waved a strange object in front of Quinn. It looked like a flask made out of silver. The only difference was that, on the facade of the flask, a skull that had 2 sharp fangs on the upper jaw was displayed. It was a strange design for Quinn. If you used a normal flask, the blood would spoil in a few days. However, this one is especially used within the circle of vampires to keep blood fresh, Fex explained. Fex then pulled out a similarly styled flask from the inside of his shirt and handed it straight over to Quinn. Finally, Dell had begun to call each group into the portal. The group took a step forward as they prepared for what was to come in their orange portal expedition. While going through the portal, the group made sure to hold on to the person in front of them tightly. Finally, the distorted space ended and white light could be seen up ahead. When their eyesight slowly returned, the first thing they could see was green. Lots of green. More specifically, giant green trees. "Please step aside to allow the other students to arrive," a loud voice said as he pointed to his side. Just like last time, they had arrived in one of the areas that had been circled off. The group went over to where the man pointed, and it seemed there were other groups of students standing by the side, waiting as well. Several soldiers were checking and coordinating with them, making sure they stayed in place and didn't wander off. "It's a lot better organized than our last trip," Layla said. The first thing Quinn did was pop up his trusty umbrella to protect him from the sun. But this time, it didn't do much to make him feel better. The place was humid, hot, and sticky, and it looked like he wasn't the only one being affected, as everyone around was sweating heavily as well. The shelter itself was vastly different as well. In a way, it looked incomplete. Most of it seemed to be made from some type of wood and mud, although the architecture was impressive. They had managed to build upon the large trees, incorporating them into their shelter. But the thing that surprised him the most was just how many residential houses there were in an orange portal like this one. "This is one of the cheapest places for people to live in," Layla explained. "The citizens aren't required to pay tax on an orange planet, so those who can't live on Earth and can't even make a living on a green portal planet end up here." Quinn started having strange thoughts after hearing this from Layla. If it was true, those who couldn't afford a place to live on Earth had no choice but to be here. Then why didn't Quinn end up in one of these places like these kids? When his parents had died, a government official had come over and explained to him that they would look after him until he was 16 and provide him with an apartment. So why didn't these kids get the same type of treatment? The students were now being led along to an open space, and while doing so, they could see the people from the shelter and children come out from above. They looked down on the new students, peeking over from the bridge. All of the first-year students were once again lined up in rows with the homeroom teachers at the front, while Faye and Leo stood in the middle of all the classes. They had come to an open area of the man-made forest. The trees had been rooted and dug out, and the ground flattened. Most of what they were standing on was mud. They could also see several paths from the circle, open area leading deeper into the forest. "All right, everyone, each class shall now explore a different path," Faye said. "The scanners will not activate until your teachers say so. You will continue to follow the path, and your teachers will tell you when you are in an unexplored area. My last warning to you all, you will encounter beasts on this trip. At what level, I do not know. I wish you all luck," Faye shouted. Fex, who was walking by Quinn's side, took in a deep breath of fresh air. "Nah, compared to Earth and these planets with all the bright colors, our home has nothing," Fex moaned. While relocating, they had decided to choose a mostly dark place, and they also needed an atmosphere that they could still live in. They had found the perfect place for vampires, but I don't know why, but it always felt strange to me. The vampires were indeed no longer on Earth like they were when the blonde man was a vampire. At some point, they had relocated to a different planet. As they walked, Quinn decided to use his inspection skill on every new thing he saw. The pathway came to an end, and now the mud had turned into thick, heavy leaves and short green plants. "This should be a good spot," Dell said as he placed his large shield onto the floor. They were now in an open area. There weren't as many trees and vines. It allowed them to see from all directions. "Students are not to travel more than 200 meters from this spot. If you do, your scanner will notify you, indicating they will no longer work," Dell explained. "For each new plant discovered, you will receive 5 points. For each new beast discovery, 20 points. All right, your scanners are on." At the same time, each of the scanners made a ding sound, and the students rushed off in different directions. "Let's do this," Layla said. "Let's get to the top for Aaron." Quinn liked that idea. He rushed off into a section of his own along with Peter and the rest. The battle for points was fierce as students continued to run around the area, scanning every item in sight. "Damn, this has been scanned already," a student complained. Some of the weaker groups decided to stay together as they went around. Although this stopped other teams from snatching points from them, their progress was relatively slower than those who roamed alone. The stronger groups decided it would be best to split up. This way they were able to cover a wider range, while the other groups decided to do a mixture of something in between. Out of the strategies implemented by different groups, to catch up to the others, Quinn's group decided to do a mixture of the two. They decided that they would travel around in pairs. Quinn and Peter, Layla and Vorden, and lastly, Fex and Sia. It was important for them to have one strong member with a support-type member. The group had already split up, and while everyone was off looking for some new items to discover, Quinn noticed something peculiar. There were 10 groups, yet nearly every group had a single member that acted as a type of mule, a person designated to carry their belongings. After a closer inspection, he also noticed that these mules were people who had the lowest levels in their group. Nevertheless, they would still wander off and look around, as instructed by their team. Wouldn't this be the perfect chance? Quinn thought. Right now they weren't in school, and many of the students had separated from each other. If he was to take a sample of their blood and mind control them afterwards to forget what had happened, no one would ever know what he had done. It was the perfect crime in such a perfect situation. Blood type A positive consumed. Strength 20. Eventually, Quinn managed to find 2 more students, and he used the same tactic as before, getting him another 2 stat points. Quinn managed to get another blood type O, increasing his charm points to 14, while also obtaining another blood type A, increasing his strength. Faye and Leo were standing together at the starting point where all the groups had split off. Suddenly, a beeping sound was heard from their watches, indicating that one of the teams had asked for help. "I'll get to it," Faye said as she stormed off at lightning speed in the direction of one of the paths. Leo stood there, taking in the fresh smell around him, but it was quickly disturbed as another beep reverberated from his watch. "Another one?" Leo said. "Is this planet more dangerous than we thought?" He had hoped that perhaps the teachers were only being trigger-happy, sending out a signal prematurely. It was always better for them to be on the cautious side when it came to these things, but the fact that 2 signals were sent out at the same time concerned Leo. The group had managed to obtain 25 points in total. They also discovered and scanned a peculiar type of rock mineral in the mix. Still, they were vastly behind the others, and their weighted points at the end of everything would be negative 25. What they were doing at this moment wasn't working, and they needed a change of plan. The quickest way for them to earn points would be to find beasts. Ding, ding, ding. Just then, a few meters away from Quinn, one of the scanners had made 3 dings, a sound that he hadn't heard yet. The scanner pointed at what looked like a boulder that was stuck in the ground. The top part could be seen, and it had several areas of green moss growing over it. But after the student had finished scanning the unique object, he took a few steps backward. Panic was evident on his face. "A beast!" he shouted. "I found a beast!" The student's teammates had gathered around the excited student to see what he was babbling on about. One of the students, who was moving closer, turned out to be Quinn. The system granted him a special bonus when he first killed a beast, though this beast has never been seen by humans before. Perhaps being the first person to kill such a beast would also grant him additional points. The team that had discovered the beast gathered around the scanner, which displayed basic information about the beasts, and after reading one line, they were excited. It was a basic tier beast. Keeping this secret to themselves, they immediately dashed forward. If it was an intermediate tier beast, the group might have been a little cautious, but a basic tier was easy pickings for a team of 5. Seeing the team of 5, Quinn was upset about how hesitant he had been. But he couldn't act right now in front of these people. The beast that the group was chasing looked like an ordinary boulder that was stuck in the ground. Even now, as the students charged towards the thing, there was no reaction from the beast. It still looked like a boulder. Seeing this, an idea came to Quinn's mind. He ran aside the students who were captivated by what was happening and entered a different part of the forest. Fex, too, decided to go off and keep an eye on what Quinn was trying to do. "Come on, guys, we can't waste time just watching this thing. Let's carry on looking around," Vorden said. The student's hand, who was leading the charge, turned into a brick-like substance, while the other students behind also drew their weapons and had their abilities readied. The student at the front slammed his fist into the boulder. A loud impact was heard, but there was no reaction. The ones from behind had also decided to use their attacks on the strange boulder-like beast, but the same had happened, and it seemed like the shell was nearly impossible to break. Seeing that the so-called beast was doing nothing, and not wanting to waste any more time, the students continued to scan around for other things. While everyone else had now lost interest in the beast, Quinn had not. He went through the forest using his inspection skill on every boulder-type thing he could see. Most of them were just that, regular boulders, but then he had finally achieved a result. Basic tier beast, Boulder Snail. A beast that has an incredibly hard outer shell. The beast will only move in rain. He was unaware that he was being watched by Fex. Using strings as he walked between trees in the air, he made his movements silently, and now he was carefully watching Quinn from above. Quinn stomped his foot onto the ground, raised the energy inside him, and pulled back his arm as he let his other fist outward at the same time. He activated his skill Blood Spray to create his still most powerful strike, Blood Hammer. It sounded like someone had shot off a bullet in the middle of the forest. The beast had a large crack in the boulder, and black liquid was slowly dripping out from it. Basic beast has been killed. 50 EXP gained. First time killing Boulder Snail. 100 bonus EXP gained. You are the first person to kill a Boulder Snail. 5,000 bonus EXP gained. Now, the loud sound that erupted from the impact of the blood hammer on the beast's shell had echoed throughout the forest. Within its chambers, a large figure dwelling deep inside a cave awoke. Bloodshot red eyes flared open as it made its move towards the sound. For defeating the new type of beast, Quinn had gained a bonus of 5,000 points, which had leveled him up a total of 3 times, and now he also had 6 free stat points to play with. For now, he thought it was best if he was to keep these stat points in reserve. Quinn wanted to place the stat points into his charm skill. Still, the Orange Portal planet was a dangerous place, and Quinn didn't know when he might need to use his other stats for dangerous situations. Before leaving the area, Quinn managed to shove his hand into the small crack he had made, even though it was only a basic tier crystal. Quinn was already thinking about what type of armor the crystal could be used for. It had been over an hour now, and the group had a total of 60 points. Now when students were scanning items with the scanner, it would constantly come up with an error. 15 minutes had passed, and there wasn't a single sound indicating the students had found something. "All right, students, everyone gather up in the center. It's time for us to move on to the next area," Dell shouted. As the students started to walk over to Dell, loud, low sounds could be heard, and vibration could be felt underneath their feet. A large beast stood on all fours and had a long neck. There was no fur, and it resembled something similar to a dinosaur. Even the size was something similar to what they would have imagined. The only difference was on its back. It seemed to have a large flower bud. It completely covered it from its neck to its tail. Advanced Tier Beast Florosaur, unable to obtain further information. "Guys, we have to run," Quinn said in a serious tone. After finding out it was an advanced tier beast, Quinn didn't even think about the possibility of trying to defeat it because of its experience points. Last time, he almost died fighting against an intermediate beast. Dell was never much of a fighter, and his ability also didn't support that fact. Immediately, he started tapping his wristwatch, sending out a distress signal. Dell just wanted one of the sergeants to appear in front of them now. Out of all the students, Quinn was the first to take a step away, trying to get a head start on the other students. But the sound of his steps caused the leaves to ruffle, and the creature's head turned and immediately looked at Quinn. "Maybe moving isn't a good idea," Layla said. Dell had felt the same way, which was why he hadn't shouted at the students to run away or retreat. The sudden movements could frighten the beasts. Most beasts were hostile towards humans, but the higher tiers seemed to have more intelligence, and some would leave humans alone. The bud on the beast's back slowly started to open up, revealing a pink center. Out of the pink center, 6 vines rose in the air before dropping down and falling to the beast's side. Although the beast wasn't moving, the vines were stretching out from the buds as if there was no end in sight. One of the vines had reached the student closest to the beast. After waiting a while, nothing happened. The student eventually opened his eyes. At that moment, the head of the vine opened up and attached itself to the student. Using both hands, he grabbed onto the vine and tried to pull as hard as he could, but it was no use. The suction and stickiness of the vine were too strong, and he couldn't break free. The vine lifted the student high into the air and towards the beast's mouth. "Everyone run! It's a hostile advanced tier beast!" Dell shouted as he ran into a random part of the forest. However, while Dell was running blindly through the forest, he was aware of a great problem. The distress signal sent from the watch was only a signal sent to the sergeants. They would then head over in that direction. If Leo or Faye was to head there now, they would have no clue where Dell or the other students had gone. The students at the back could hear the booming footsteps getting louder and louder. When Dell had made it past another tree, they had finally come out to an open area. The open area was quite large. To the left and right there were two paths, but they were slightly slanted going uphill, and Dell didn't like their chances of outrunning the beast. "We have no choice. We have to turn and fight," Dell shouted. The vines continued to hover around the beast's side as if they were alive like snakes, while the main body of the beast charged straight ahead into the students. Like a whip, the vines were used to knock the students who were closest to it. "Healers and support-type abilities, come and stay behind me. We don't want you to get hurt," Dell commanded. "Anyone who uses a beast weapon as their main attack, come closer to me now. My ability allows me to double the strength and durability of any beast weapon for a limited time. We need to defeat the beast before time runs out," Quinn overheard Dell said. "Pio, come!" Quinn shouted as he dashed off towards the fallen students on the ground. Peter wasn't the only one that was following Quinn. Right now on his other side, Fex was running closely behind him as well. "I'll cover you while you do whatever you want to do, but you will owe me one after this," Fex said with a wink. As the three boys got closer to the beast, the vine started to head towards them, slashing out at an incredible speed. Now on the other side, another vine was coming towards them, and this time it was Fex's turn. Fex was a vampire and was unable to use his ability just like Quinn. However, there was a clear advantage of Fex's ability over others. When using his string ability, it was almost invisible to the human eye. As the vine came towards him, spread both his hands out and slashed it downward, cutting the head of the vine right off. However, just like with Peter, the vine seemed to have an incredible recovery speed, and right now, the head was starting to form out of the cut cells by Fex. Quinn placed his finger into the student's blood around the chest. It was too far away for the other students to see the finer details, and everyone else was busy fighting the beast. Quickly shifting his hand into his mouth, he quickly picked up the student and rushed back to the others. "AB blood type consumed, stamina 18. Quinn repeated this process with the other students who had been hit. In total, he managed to save 5 students, and at the same time consume their blood. All in all, Quinn had gotten stronger. Strength 23, agility 19, stamina 18, charm 16. While Quinn was busy looking at his stats, and the two by his side were busy dealing with the vines, a third vine had already set its sight on Quinn. When the two had looked at each other, the vine had set its target. It reached out as far as it could to grab onto Quinn. Just as the vine was about to reach Quinn, its movements suddenly slowed, and Quinn was able to create a distance between the two. That's when he noticed the strange, ghost-like spear, half of its body inside an elephant. "The spirit spear?" Quinn said confusingly. Upon looking back, he could see Sia had decided to help out by using her spear. Thanks to Sia's spear, the beast had slowed down just enough for Quinn to move out of the way, avoiding the vine whip. A second spear was thrown and had landed in the same spot on the beast's legs. The effective 2 spears had stacked, and now the beast was 20% slower than it usually would have been, and also 20% weaker. The students took advantage of this temporary weakness. Their attacks, which were bouncing off the beast, are now damaging it, and the vines that were troubling slowed down. With Vorden and Sia using their spirit spears, the beast had now lost 40% of its overall strength. It was nearly half of what it used to be. Quinn no longer felt the need for him or Fex to get involved when fighting the beast. The beast now looked heavily injured. It lifted its front 2 feet into the air and slammed them onto the ground. The beast repeatedly did this action as it roared and screamed. At the same time, the vines that were coming off from the bud on its back swung more widely. The beast used its long head and looked back into the forest. The next moment, it started running back from where it came from. "Nobody should chase the beast," Dell shouted. "Some advanced-type beasts and above have something called a berserker mode. Once injured to a certain point, if the beast feels like it's stuck in a corner, it will activate its berserker mode, sometimes increasing its strength several times." But then, a female with light pink hair stepped in front of Quinn and bowed down to him. As she lifted her head, her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you so much for saving my friend," the pink-haired girl said. After that, she hurried off to join her teammates. The thanks should have made Quinn feel good, but it didn't. Originally, he had only gone out there not to save the students, but because he saw it as an opportunity to take their blood, he didn't deserve the praise. When the students had all settled down, they decided to have a minute of silence, out of respect for the students that had been lost. But they couldn't spend much time because they were in a serious situation right now. Leo had arrived at the camp where the distress signal had come from. There were no students around. Leo started to hunt around for clues when the sounds of large, heavy footsteps could be heard heading in his direction. A large flame of red energy seemed to be spiraling in his direction. This was what happened when a beast was just about to go into berserker mode. "If it gets to that point, it might be a little bit inconvenient," Leo moaned as he drew out his trusty sword. Immediately 6 lines of red energy came whipping out at Leo. Focusing his mind, he waited until all paths of the red energy crossed each other. In that moment, he took a single swing of his blade. The 6 vines that had come out at him had all been sliced off. The line of energy was thin and white, but the beast had no time to react, and it had completely passed through its neck. "I guess you can't regenerate your head," said Leo. After defeating the beast, he didn't stop for a moment, not even to extract the crystal core from its body. Right now, the students were a priority, and if they had run into similar beasts to the one he had just faced, he feared the worst for the students. They started to travel up the left side of the mountain. Dell had made the decision and was ordering the group around, but he wasn't the one that stood in front of the group. Instead, some of the stronger groups had their frontliner. The scanners had been turned on. They would still record points and work as long as they were within a 200-meter radius of Dell. The group decided to stay closer, and no one was venturing far away from their team or far from the whole group. The students started to walk around to see if there were any other options to scale the mountain, or if they could see the shelter from the edges of the mountain. Dell was currently just standing in the middle, looking up at the mountain to his right and down the sloped path from where they had come from. In the middle of their exploration, though, 3 clear and distinctive dings were suddenly heard. The students all turned to where the sound came from, as it indicated that a beast had been discovered by the scanner. But looking at the student whose scanner went off, it looked like there was nothing, even around him. "What did you discover?" Dell said as he walked over to the student. The student pointed at a purple blade of grass on the floor. But to his surprise, the scanner said he wasn't holding a plant, but a beast. When Dell snatched the scanner from the student, a dark expression appeared on his face. "An intermediate beast, this little thing? How can that be possible?" The students were not actively looking at the grass around them, but now they noticed that there were a few single strands of purple grass every so often from the grasses surrounding them. "Is it going to rain?" Layla asked, but Quinn was interested in the beast. He bent down and looked closer at the blade of grass. "Inspect. Intermediate beast. Dumping bait beast. The top of the beast's head can often seem like a blade of grass, while most of its body remained underground. The beast cannot move, but when the rain comes it will sprout from underneath." As a single raindrop fell on the purple shade of grass, it suddenly shook, and the ground started to vibrate as well. "Guys, get away from the purple grass!" Quinn shouted to his teammates. "Let's head back down the slope." As Quinn said these words, a 2-meter-tall purple plant appeared behind him. Its body was as thick as a tree, and its head was as wide as a car. On top of its head was the strand of grass that could barely be seen on top of the giant plant-like beast. "Quinn!" Layla shouted as a plant dived down. But it was too late. The large plant had swallowed Quinn. Chaos erupted on the side slope of the mountain. However, the beasts were too fast. As if it was a snake, the plants opened their mouths wide and sometimes consumed more than one student at a time, and one of these students was Quinn. "No, he's not dead," Peter replied. "I can tell." "I'll go get him," Fex said. There was no panic on Fex's face, just a slight smile. "Eat me then, you piece of—" Then he was gone, swallowed by the beast plant. The others stayed there watching the plant for a few seconds, hoping that Fex had some sort of plan. But after watching for a while and seeing no result, the situation couldn't be more obvious. "Run!" Vorden shouted. "That's all we can do. If Peter says Quinn is safe, then we just have to believe him." The whole group had now been swallowed by different beet plants. Fex and Quinn, Layla and Vorden, and finally Peter and Sia. A few of the other students had been swallowed. A few were also knocked off the side of the cliff. The moment the rain stopped, all the beasts went into hibernation. They returned underground and turned into beautiful stalks of purple grasses once more. Amazingly, soil started to form over the purple grasses, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain returned to its original state. It was as if nothing had happened. "Is it over?" a student asked, huffing and panting. He felt as if he would collapse from exhaustion at any moment. "What should we do now, and what about the others?" another asked. Dell looked around, and he could see there wasn't much blood. Also, during his studies, he discovered that plant-type beasts weren't mostly carnivores. The fact that these plants probably didn't have the acid necessary to digest meat meant that the students were still probably alive. "I hate to say this, but they're probably already dead," Dell lied. "It's best if we head back down to where we were. If we carry on going upward, then there might be even more dangerous beasts." Before heading back down the slope, a student spotted another person walking up. As they saw who it was, a huge smile appeared on their faces. "Sergeant Leo!" the student shouted. There wasn't much that needed to be said, as Leo agreed that he would take them back to the shelter for now. Just as the students were about to head down the slope, Leo started to walk over to a strange object. A certain item was giving off energy, similar to that of a beast weapon. "Do you mind telling me what it looks like?" Leo asked Dell, who wouldn't leave his side. "It appears to be some type of metal flask, although it has some strange design on it. It looks like a beast's head with fangs. Maybe it's one of the items that the students dropped during the struggle," Dell answered.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.